Hey, Calgary. That's a nice undefeated start to the season you have going there. Sure would be a shame if something happened to it. What's crack? What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken, in overtime, hand Calgary their first loss of the season, so they can keep their point streak to start the season. But they do have a loss now as the Kraken win this one 2-1 in extra time, which admittedly is not the final score I was expecting to see out of this game, regardless of who ended up winning it, especially considering coming into this game, these were two of the highest scoring teams in the NHL in the early part of the season. Calgary was coming in as the second highest scorer in goals per game, and Seattle had put up 13 goals in the last two. So, yeah, 2-1 overtime game I don't think is necessarily what anyone was expecting, but it was an exciting back and forth game with two great goaltending performances, and it's always fun when the home team wins in overtime. Except for earlier in the season in Minnesota, it was fun when Seattle won there, but you get my point. Although actually that was a shootout win in Minnesota for the Kraken, not an overtime win, and even for home teams, winning in the shootout is just a little bit more anticlimactic. Not as many people are big fans of the shootout. Anyway, for the Kraken, it makes it 3 straight wins for them this game against Calgary, including the first 2 of this homestand, and it also makes them 4-2 on the season, which is the best start to a season they've had in franchise history. So, yeah, things are going pretty well right now in Krakenland. Also, the 2-1 win, even if it's not what we were expecting, does show that the Kraken can win in multiple ways. The previous close game that they had, or low-scoring game, I should say, that they had, was the game in Dallas where they got shut out 2-0. The biggest difference for the Kraken in whether or not they were going to win a game coming into this Calgary game being whether or not they were able to score a lot. As their 3 wins, they scored 4, 5 with the extra goal counted for the shootout win, then 6 and 7 goals. So, yeah, they needed to score quite a bit to get those wins. The other game that they lost being a 2-3 loss to St. Louis, where they did score twice to open things up, but then gave up 3 consecutive and didn't score again. So it was nice to see that they could actually win one of these low-scoring games. Not that it wasn't going to happen over the course of the season, but the defensive end has been a little bit more of a learning process under this new system for the Kraken, while the offense seems to have found its way, although Calgary did do a pretty good job of shutting at least that part of Seattle's game plan down in this game, thanks in large part to a very good performance from Vladar in net. For the Kraken, speaking of individual performances for a second, and obviously we'll get to this a little bit more in depth with the 3 stars towards the end of the video, but it was a pretty good game for anybody that got paid in these last couple of months, which includes obviously the 2 big signings of Montour and Stevenson, as well as Matty Beniers had a great night, even though he doesn't end up on the score sheet. He had a very good night. And Joey Decord, obviously with a 2-1 game, he too had a very good night at the other end of the ice for the Kraken. And although both goaltenders did have good nights, as we get into the game with actually one other thing that we should probably mention first, that Vince Dunn was not a part of this game for the Kraken. He was day-to-day after the last game. We mentioned that towards the end of it, that he was on the bench for the third period, but they didn't play him after he took a bit of a weird hit. It took a weird fall earlier on in that game, coming back from the injury that he got in Minnesota. And honestly, especially with the couple of public enemies on the Flames, anybody wearing a 70-something jersey is someone that was getting booed for the Flames. It probably wasn't the worst night to not have Dunn in the lineup, especially considering one of those 2 guys is the guy that hurt Dunn in the first place at the end of last season that made him go through all the rehab in the offseason, and who knows if he was even fully back 100% when this season started. It's also the same guy that nearly hurt McCann partway through this game, so still not a fan of number 76. And then I actually didn't even remember that he was on the team, but Lomberg, who hurt Justin Schultz way back a couple years ago, has also found his way onto Calgary, and he's wearing number 70. So again, yeah, anybody wearing number 70 on the Flames is not going to find many fans in Seattle. Anyway, with all that out of the way, we can finally get into the game where, even though I said both goaltenders did have very good nights over the course of this, and obviously the stat sheet shows that, they didn't really have to work that hard in the first period, especially the first half of the first period, where by the 10-minute mark, the Flames had just gotten their first shot on goal, and the Kraken only had 1 to speak of themselves. And it didn't even come on the power play that they had early on in the game, which they did get some pretty good looks on that power play. They were able to stay in the offensive end for a large chunk of the power play and get some good chances, just none of them made it to the net. Both teams actually doing a pretty good job of clogging up shooting lanes and blocking shots, or at least deflecting them to the side before they ever got to the goaltender. So yeah, by the time we reach the 10-minute mark of the first period, both teams have just one shot on goal. Now, the Kraken double their shot total shortly after that, and then a couple minutes later, with about 7.5 to 7 minutes left in the first period, so we're already 3/4 of the way through the first frame, Calgary gets their second shot on goal, which Decord makes a save on. So 4 total shots in the first 13 or so minutes of play. Now, thankfully, things did pick up as the game went along. Still a pretty low shot total, though, by the end of the game, 22 to 23 in favor of Seattle. So yeah, defenses continue to play well in this game, especially in their respective ends of the ice, not allowing a lot of net front presence really from either team, which from a Kraken standpoint is definitely improvement defensively, as although things have been going pretty well offensively with the exception of that game against the Stars, they'd been having a little bit more issues in their own end of the ice, especially when it comes to allowing opposing players to get past all of the skaters and get either one-on-ones with the goaltender or get right up close to them with the puck or pick up a rebound. Just general opposing net front presence in the Kraken end of the ice had kind of been a problem to this point in the season, or at least a common thread. When the Kraken did have problems, it largely stemmed from something like that happening, just defensive breakdowns in their own end of the ice, and that was pretty clean in this game. They didn't have a lot of terrible defensive breakdowns. Decord still had a couple of very nice sequences with some good saves, especially later on in the game. And I guess it's worth mentioning here in the first period that although it didn't cost either goaltender, both of them, their biggest mistake of the game came in the first, and both teams ended up missing what was completely open nets. For the Flames, it was earlier on in the first period, back when the Kraken only had one shot on goal. They get a 2-on-1. Bjorkstrand ends up making a beautiful move to beat Vladar, goes forehand to backhand, and then whiffs on the backhand that would have just tapped it into an empty net, having completely beaten Vladar. So, yeah, the Flames get away with one there. And then at the end of the period, after the Kraken send the Flames to a late power play to finish out the period, Decord gets away with one when he goes out to handle a puck and then kind of mishandles the puck, misses the clear attempt, or he's trying to pass it up the boards to a Kraken player on the kill, misses it completely. The Flames get a hold of it, get it across to the other side, and the shot at what is, again, a completely empty net with Decord still out by the corner of the trapezoid. It's completely whiffed on. It goes out to the boards harmlessly. Unfortunately, on that occasion, the Flames are able to pick up the puck, stay in the offensive end, with the last few seconds of the first period coming to an end still in the power play. And the next shot, while Decord is in the net, he isn't able to see it cleanly as there's a couple of his own teammates and another Flame player between he and the shot. It gets through all of them, does graze his pad, but ends up just in the corner of the net to give the Flames the power play goal and the 1-0 lead with 7 seconds left in the first. So, yeah, it probably then goes without saying that this is definitely not ideally how you'd like to end the period if you're the Kraken, even if it's on a power play for the Flames. Giving up a goal with just 7 seconds left in the period, especially when offense has been really hard to come by with, I want to say, just 5 shots on goal for the Kraken in the first frame. But they're going to have to figure out how to come back once again in this one, and the second period doesn't really offer a whole lot as far as that's concerned early on, as it's kind of just more of the same, but with more power plays, as the Flames get a second power play early on in this period, but it doesn't really go much of anywhere. The Kraken do a good job of killing that off. Then the Kraken get a power play a couple minutes later, which, again, is pretty well killed off by the Flames. There's chances back and forth, but they're fairly sparse, and shots on goal are even sparser. I mean, it's not like the start of the game where there's only 4 shots on goal total through the first 10 minutes of the period or anything like that. But even by the midway point of this period, as the Kraken get another power play about at the midway point of the game, it's still something like 10 shots apiece per team. Maybe the Flames had a little bit of an edge. Maybe it was like 12-8. But yeah, this is a pretty defensive first game. The Kraken, though, fortunately, not only get 1 power play, but 2 power plays here in the middle part of the period, and they're overlapping, so they're going to get 47 seconds of 5-on-3. And then they do something that I really like here, and I liked it in the moment as well. They call what is, I've probably seen as a bit of an aggressive timeout, if you will. They call their 1 timeout of the game here midway through the second period as they're going to the 5-on-3. I think rightly recognizing that because offense was so hard to come by, that this was the chance that they really had to take advantage of and make sure that they did everything they could to try to even things up on this power play, because you don't know if you're going to get another chance until the end of the game. So Coach Campbell calls the guys over to go over the plan for this power play to make sure that they get that game-tying goal. And granted, it's a 5-on-3, so the chances of scoring go up quite a bit, but the Kraken do end up making the most of it. It takes a little while. They do end up winning the opening faceoff, which is a big thing there, so the Flames don't have a chance to waste a significant chunk of those 47 seconds. The Kraken keep in the offensive end, cycled a couple of times. Stevenson fires off a shot with the screen in front from Schwartz, but it goes off Schwartz in front of the net. Schwartz ends up just blocking the shot himself. The Kraken managed to maintain possession of it, get it back to Stevenson. Stevenson across to McCann. He doesn't see anything, so he goes back to Stevenson, who's wound up, fires off a shot, and scores to give the Kraken the power play goal and even things at 1. So Stevenson gets his first of the season and first as a Kraken. This time, his shot getting through the crowd in front of the net, which is helped out by having a teammate screening Vladar with the fantastic night he was having. He pretty much had to take his eyes away to have a chance. And they did that pretty well on the first Stevenson shot. The problem was just that the shot went off that screen, being Jaden Schwartz in front of the net. This shot, though, when it comes through, the screen in front of the net is able to jump above that shot so it can get through past Vladar to the far corner. And it's not just any jump. There's some pretty impressive air there here in front of the net, which means, it's got to be one of the younger players, right, with some younger legs. And zooming in. Oh, nope, that's Jaden Schwartz once again with almost an NBA-style vertical there, so I guess he's ready for a year or two from now when the Sonics come back. Probably won't have the same vertical then. Either way, Schwartz does a good job of learning from taking the previous Stevenson shot to the side, and this time getting over it when that shot comes, so the Kraken can tie up this game. Unfortunately, they aren't able to follow that up by taking the lead on the remaining power play after this goal is scored, or in the remaining second period after this goal is scored, as we do end up getting to the second intermission with things still tied at 1. And you've seen the final score, so you know that this game ends in overtime with a 2-1 score, so obviously no one scores in the third period either, which features 2 more power plays. Both teams get 1 more chance with the man advantage. Neither one takes advantage of that man advantage. Really, the Kraken do have a pretty good period here. They're able to, like I mentioned earlier, get the momentum in the middle part of this period and really hold on to it for, I would say, the most sustained time that either team had some noticeable momentum was the Kraken here through the middle part of the third period, even getting some shots on goal, catching up to the Flames in shots on goal, and even passing them there for a little bit. Unfortunately, they just weren't able to get one past Vladar, and largely that was because of a lack of traffic in front of the net. At 5-on-5, neither team was really able to get to the net without trouble. And even when they were able to get to the net, it wasn't any kind of... It didn't really make much of a difference, we'll put it that way. They weren't able to set up screens or pick up rebounds, anything like that. So lots of shots from the outside that goaltenders were able to see. With the exception of late in the third period, the Flames do get a couple of pretty good sequences where they do get some net front traffic, get a couple of rebounds, get shots off on those rebounds, but those were all either blocked or saved by Joey Decord. Especially with, I want to say, like 4 minutes left in the game. Decord has one sequence that straight up saves the game for the Kraken. A couple of back-to-back very good saves, and eventually he's able to reach and freeze the puck outside the crease as he's just sprawling all over the crease from one side to the other. I think 3 saves in a row at one point, which, considering how few and far between shots on goal had been in this game, for that many shots to happen all at once, obviously the speed of the game hadn't bored Joey to sleep or anything like that. He was very much ready to go when that came his way. So we go to overtime, where the Kraken are able to get possession early, hold on to it, and eventually Montour tries to do just a little bit too much with the puck, diving deep into Calgary's end of the ice and trying to force a pass along the boards that gets cut off to some degree. Montour has to fight for it a bit, but Calgary ends up with possession. Kadri has it, and then as Kadri is leaving the zone, he tries to drop it to his teammate, but a key part of this play here that I think might have gotten lost in the shuffle at least a little bit, maybe the broadcast talked about a little bit more, but as Kadri's trying to drop it to his teammate, who the screenshot is out of frame, Eberle's able to come in and get his stick on Kadri's stick just as he's trying to have that backwards pass to his teammate to start the breakout, and that ends up turning what probably would have been a fine drop pass to his teammate into a flubbed pass, and the puck goes out into the face-off circle, where the closest player then to it is Montour following up the play. Montour picks it up, circles around, fires off a shot on net, but that is saved by Vladar. Obviously, again, completely on his game all night long, even with this one-on-one from in tight. But critically, although Vladar does make the save on that grade A chance for Montour all alone in the slot, he also allows a rebound that bounces out into open ice towards the same direction that Montour is heading. So Montour is able to get to that first. He does kind of have to fight for it, and it's a little awkward, so he isn't able to get a second shot off. He, I think, tried to, but doesn't get all of it. Either way, he ends up, I want to say, on his knees, or anyway, doesn't have a chance to get another shot off. What he does have a chance to do, though, is recognize that coming back into the play, circling back in, is Jordan Eberle coming right down the center of the offensive end. Montour sees that, gets the pass to Eberle. Eberle winds up, fires in, scores to give the Kraken the 2-1 overtime victory in the same end of the ice as his overtime victory in Game 4 of the playoffs a couple years ago against Colorado. I mean, I know that's going back a ways, but yeah, watching Eberle score at that end of the ice in that net in overtime, it brings back some pretty fond memories, especially as he circles to the same place that he went after scoring that goal. Everybody comes and tackles him, including what might be one of the plays of the night and probably will be the one that's most remembered as this season goes along. It certainly has a chance to turn into a meme thanks to Decord himself, as Decord comes in to celebrate with his teammates after the goal goes in. You got the three guys that were on the ice immediately converge, and they're in the big celebratory embrace. Decord is the next one that gets there. He jumps and completely misses, falls to the side. Maybe got a little bit too excited after the game. When asked about it, he said, "Oops, had the zoomies." Which, I don't know what's better, the missed celebratory tackle jump on the pile, or the response to what ends up happening there is Decord tumbles to the ice. The other two guys there, Beniers and McCann. Beniers just kind of looks at him and goes, huh, and then goes and celebrates with his teammates. McCann at least checks on him at first and then goes and continues celebrating. Eventually the pile just kind of piled around Decord after he had a fantastic game, so he gets up to his feet and then is able to join the scrum. But a great game there from the Kraken, ended by the captain, who finishes what was never going to be a perfect season for the Flames, but gives the Flames their first loss and just continues what has been a great start to the season for Eberle as he picks up his 5th goal in the first 6 games, which, while we're on the subject, is a welcome change of pace from how Eberle's seasons seem to usually start, at least in his time with the Kraken, where he does get a lot of these very good scoring chances at the start of pretty much every season, but he has always seemed like he's snake bitten at the start of seasons. He'll get great chances, get absolutely robbed by goaltender after goaltender. It doesn't even matter really who it is. It just seems like Eberle could never get a season to start like this, and now suddenly everything's going for him. So it's obviously, again, a great start to the season for Eberle, and who knows, maybe it's that C that he's wearing on his chest. Obviously, it seems to be suiting him pretty well to this point. Aside from him, though, like I said in the beginning, it was a pretty good night for especially those guys that got paid here in the last couple of months, which I'm including Decord in that, even though he's still on his current contract and won't start making the money he just got paid until next year. Obviously a great game for Decord. A couple of very, very key saves there, especially towards the end of the third period. Ends up saving 21 of 22 shots for the Flames. And then you've got the 2 signings in free agency. Montour with that great play in overtime, and just in general continues to be an absolute force for the Kraken, which makes a huge difference, especially without Vince Dunn. The Kraken still obviously miss Dunn when he's not in the lineup. Like I said, 2 goals in 2 games without Dunn so far. But there's not as much of that glaring offensive hole in the defensive end when Dunn isn't there, as Montour is able to provide a lot of that in a different pairing. And Riker Evans does pretty good as well, but he's still learning the paces. Montour just making a huge difference for this team, and obviously does a lot of the work to set up that overtime winner. Then you've got Chandler Stevenson, who gets his first goal as a Kraken and does it on the power play, a couple of chances. So when the Flames granted, again, like I said, 5-on-3, but they were definitely leaning towards the McCann side of things, and rightfully so, as McCann is clearly the weapon that the Kraken want to be using mostly on the power play. but they put Stevenson on the other side. He fired off 2 big shots on that 5-on-3, and the one that didn't hit his teammate hit the back of the net, so great night for him. And then as for the other guy that made a lot of money in this offseason for the Kraken that doesn't show up on the score sheet in this game but still had a fantastic one is Matty Beniers. I thought this was pretty clearly his best game of the season. Quite frankly, the fact that he didn't end up on the score sheet is just a credit to how well the Flames were playing defensively and how well Vladar was playing in net. I don't know how many shots. Let me check real quick. So Beniers only had the 1 shot on goal in this game, but he was constantly the one transitioning it through the neutral zone, which was a very contested area of the ice in this game in particular. The Kraken have been scoring a lot thanks to this, like we've mentioned a couple of times, faster, more north-south style of offense that Bilesma and the new coaching staff have brought in. And Beniers has really, I think, been thriving in the transition part of that. Now, it hasn't led to a lot of points yet, either assists or he doesn't have a goal yet this season, but he has been doing pretty well in transition. And this game was, I would say, certainly his best there. He was, I think it's fairly safe to say he was the best at transitioning the puck for the Kraken in this game. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot to be had once they got into the offensive end. The Flames were able to lock things down there. Still, Beniers, I think, did everything outside of getting on the stat sheet in this game, including some pretty good plays in the defensive end as well to take pucks away from the Flames. He was a large part of the reason that the Kraken were so good in their own end of the ice to answer how the Flames were playing in their end. So yeah, great night for Beniers. Yeah, just the points aren't quite coming for him just yet. And like I said in the beginning, that for the team as a whole was, I think, the biggest takeaway for me from this game was that the Kraken showed an ability to play with a team that, even if I didn't really think much of them coming into the season, if you saw my preview video, you know that I didn't think much of the Flames coming into the season, or prediction video for the Pacific Division, I should say. At least so far, the Flames have been proving me wrong, obviously coming into the game 4-0, and they didn't do anything in this game that makes me think that they aren't that team that started 4-0. Obviously, it's a very long season still left to go, so plenty of time for things to change. Who knows, maybe I'll still end up being right by the end of the season, but right now the Flames are playing some very good hockey, and the Kraken were able to stick with them and play a different game and win a different way from how they won their other 3 games so far this season. So, an impressive win for the Kraken. Good to see the defensive end especially work out very well for them. But with that, let's actually finish things off here with the Kraken 3 stars. And I know we just spent a bunch of time talking about some individual performances that were very good, and some of those guys are going to come up here again in the 3 stars, but we have to actually hand out those stars. As always, brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to help decide these Kraken 3 stars after every Kraken game, whether they win or lose, but it's a lot more fun after they win, you can go to the link down below and help support the channel a little bit more and help support these R&Rs after every game. The first star, it's got to be Joey Decord. Obviously, there's some good performances in this game, but the Kraken were in this game and it got to overtime where they could win it because of Decord, and especially, again, those couple of sequences, very nice ones he had there at the end of the 3rd period. Now, do you feel a little bit different about the performance if the net that he leaves completely empty on that power play ends up actually getting hit? Honestly, I don't really think so. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, the Flames end up scoring just a couple seconds later on the power play anyway. Now, it's a much more understandable goal that they score when they do a couple seconds later, as Decord is in the net and it gets past him because he couldn't see the shot coming through the screen and traffic in front of him, versus if that one had gone in, it would have been, well, it would have made it on the Dang It's video if those were still a thing, certainly. And honestly, even if it wasn't for the great performance that Decord did have, I think he's probably worthy of a star just for the post-game antics that he had, missing the pile, and then certainly the quote afterwards about having the zoomies and that being the reason that he missed the pile. Fortunately, he's okay, obviously. We definitely do not need Decord getting hurt, missing a celebration pile at the end of a game. Either way, moving on to the second star. For me, the second star in this game it's got to be Brandon Montour. He has a fantastic game. Again, sets up Eberle for that game winner. Oh, I probably should have given Eberle the second star. Oh, well, Montour has a fantastic game. So he's going to be the second star in this one. I'm just going to stick with it. Continues to be, like I said, an absolute steady force on the back end for the Kraken. Really just a second Vince Dunn in a lot of ways, but with more NHL experience that does show up at times. So yeah, just continue to be incredibly impressed by Montour, and very glad that they signed that contract. Now, we're 5 games into a 7-year contract that's not necessarily going to age well, but it's been a pretty good 5 games. So it's all we have to go off of. And then the third star, yeah, it's got to be Jordan Eberle. Like I said, probably could have given him the second star, but Eberle, the captain, with the game winner. The second game that goes to extra time for the Kraken, that Eberle ends up being the winner. He won it with the official winning goal in the shootout in Minnesota, and now he gets the sudden death winner in overtime. It's just been a great season for Eberle. Like I said, the 5 goals in 6 games, plus that shootout winner that doesn't count as a goal, but yeah, it's just been a great season for Eberle, and hopefully that continues. He did say that he had kind of changed the way that he approached the offseason and worked on some different things, obviously coming closer towards the end of his career, but trying to keep that speed up and not slow down like a lot of players do in their last few years. And so far, so good. Anyway, whatever he tried to do in the offseason, it seems like it's been working. And yeah, even though it wasn't a 10-goal game, still a very fun game to watch, especially because the Kraken won. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below, who your 3 stars would be. Like I said, especially Beniers and Stevenson with his first goal as a Kraken, I think would both be very deserving. McCann had another pretty good game with an assist on the Stevenson goal, and also was able to stay in the game after taking a bit of a, I don't know, necessarily call it dirty, but it was certainly at least an awkward hit that he might be feeling tomorrow from the same guy that knocked Vince Dunn out of the back half of last season. So, yeah. Anyway, fun game for the Kraken, so we'll focus on the good parts of this one. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.